In today's episode, Lou and I have the challenge of going through 3 different discographies from the big 3. So that entails Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Drake. And we're going to have to rank all of their projects in one combined list. So that is 28 projects as a whole. That includes mixtapes, it also includes EPs, and it also includes studio albums. So the way that we ended up doing this is that for J. Cole, we started off with the warm-up, and we went all the way to My Delete Later. For Kendrick Lamar, Overly Dedicated, all the way up to Mr. Morale. And then for Drake, we did So Far Gone, all the way up to For All the Dogs. So guys, let me know where we got it right, where we got it wrong. And if we could get this video to over 7,000 likes, guys, it would mean the world to us. But Lou, how do you feel about your list today? Because to be honest with you, I had an easy time making it.
You had an easy time.
I had an easy time
Honestly,
making
there
it.
was a lot of last-minute switch-ups for me where I'm like, is this project really better than this other one? Just because I have such a big affinity for almost all of these records. Maybe not like the 28, 27, 26 marks, but I mean, for the most part, like especially when I was in like that 15 to 10 range, I was struggling.
That's where it got tricky. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But how about the top 5? Looking at your top 5.
Top 5 was easy to put together.
Top 5 was an easy part to put together. I might have some surprises for you in that top 5. But Lou, this is how we're going to do it, okay? So we're going to reveal our 28 to 21 placements first, and I want you to go first. So give me your 28 to 21. Go
so
first.
The worst album from the big 3 at 28, For All the Dogs by Drake, is going to come in there. Number 27, Honestly Never Mind by Drake. Number 26 is Certified Lover Boy by Drake. Number 25... Might Delete Later by J. Cole coming in.
Okay.
Number 24 is going to be Scorpion by Drake. Yeah? Was that too low?
Oh my goodness, Lou. What
wow,
the fuck are
okay.
we doing here? Okay, keep going.
23 is Dark Lane Demo Tapes by Drake. 22 is Sideline Story by J. Cole. And then at 21, we have Thank Me Later by Drake once again. So Drake is obviously super dominant. I could already tell by the look in your face that you're disappointed.
You have Overly Dedicated in the top 20?
I do have Overly Dedicated in the top 20. And I'll speak more about it like when we get into that portion of it. But I do think that it's better than all of these projects. And I mean, upon
you would
like...
put Overly Dedicated over a Dark Lane Demo Tapes.
I would.
You would put Overly Dedicated over a Sideline Story.
I would.
Lou, this
the more
is
that I
fucking
listen to that tape, the more appreciation I grow. But
stop it. Bro.
The reason why I put For All the Dogs at number 28 as the worst, I want to talk about that because that does hold a lot of weight, you know, having it as the worst. I feel like there's been Drake's catalog pre-Scorpion and then post-Scorpion, and it feels like, for me at least, as a listener, as a fan of Drake's, you know that saying that, like, a meal is always better when it's made with love? It feels like these projects lately haven't been made with that passion, with that love, and I feel like they've been made more with, like, the desire to uphold a sales threshold, and For All the Dogs is a perfect example of that. 20-plus album, not very well curated. You have Drake trying to adapt to the styles of trending artists like Yeat and Lil Yachty forcefully and making garbage pop records with someone like a Bad Bunny. Not too much to get out of For All the Dogs. But any other questions for me with the ranking of
but besides
this
that, I mean, listen, you're going to see when I reveal mine, I have a pretty similar ranking. But you're going to be surprised because, actually, I'm surprised. Well, I'm not going to lie to you, bro. Like, there's certain ones here that I expected you to at least have in the top 20.
So you were going to say Scorpion and Dark Lane Demo Tapes, right?
Well, okay, how about this?
Those are too low?
Those are, well, no, not Dark Lane Demo Tapes. I'll reveal my 20 to 21, okay? So, 28, I have For All the Dogs.
Yeah.
27, Honestly Never Mind.
Okay.
26, CLB. 25, Overly Dedicated.
Wow, that what?
24, Might Delete Later.
No.
23, Thank Me Later. 22, Dark Lane Demo Tapes. And 21, Untitled, Unmastered, bro. No way.
Untitled, Unmastered is in your 21.
Yeah. I have it.
Oh, my goodness.
I have it at 21.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me, bro.
I have it. Listen, at the end of the day, I think there's fantastic records on this EP. I want to say that. We're talking about ranking discographies, and I wanted to go into this ranking, and I hold a lot of value when it comes to studio album experiences. They're Lucy's. They're fantastic Lucy's, though. Untitled 02, 07, 08, fantastic production. I just feel like when you go into a lot more of my projects, let's say on, you know, when you start progressing through my list, getting a lot better records, you're getting a lot more value as far as track list goes. I love Untitled Unmastered, don't get me wrong, but bro, are we being serious
Are
here?
we being serious? You're going to tell me that Scorpion by Drake is a better project than Untitled Unmastered? Think about think about track list consistency when you're going from those Untitled Unmastered tracks and Scorpion.
You have a double album with realistically 2 skips.
2 skips only on Scorpion, though.
I can make the argument for it.
Okay, name me the 2 skips.
I'll pull up the track list for you right
So
now.
God's Plan's a skip for you.
Don't worry, I'll pull it up for you. I got you, bro.
There's no way.
We're talking about smashers on this record. We're talking about fantastic R&B cuts. We're talking about incredible rapping performances with 8 out of 10. Is There More? Sandra's Rose, Emotionless. Come on, bro. Let's slow down on the Scorpion hate here, Lou. We really gotta look at this. I'm a big fan of Don't Matter to Me. I'm a big fan of That's How You Feel. I love Blue Tint. Realistically, I'm not a fan of Ratchet Happy Birthday. And then I would say God's Plan. Realistically,
What about I'm Upset? That's not a skip to you?
I always liked Upset. That's not a bad take. I've told you this take all the time. Like, bro, we're talking about a 25 song double album that actually has great consistencies. And there's also a lot of diversity within this track list. There's some of Drake's best ever rapping performances in the modern side of his career. I cannot put Untitled and Mastered over this.
Man, I'll be honest. You're getting a mixed bag with that album in every sense of the word. And I feel like...
no way.
Like, listening to this album felt like
No
buying
way.
a carton of milk that was like 2 days expired, bro. Just because Drake decided to change the entire direction of the album after the Pusha T battle. And to me, it comes off as like bitter thoughts after losing a battle. And I didn't like that he had to, like, for one of his biggest studio albums ever, I think it was the actual studio album that was one of his most hyped of his whole career, and you ended up getting a mixed bag, and you ended up getting him dedicating a large section of that album to bitter feelings.
But
once
Lou, we're
again.
not talking about a large section of this album. Let's be clear here. There wasn't full verses or even a diss track dedicated towards Pusha T or Kanye on this album.
8 out of 10 was a Pusha T response.
Hey, listen, you really want to do the ratio of this album's runtime and the amount of lines on this album in comparison to what's actually being said? Yeah, there was subliminals. There was definitely subliminals. But I'm not looking at the subliminals on this album and also looking at, oh, well, okay, we got a couple of skips here and being like, yeah, that's bottom of the pack for me.
It just sounds dated at this point.
Oh, I don't think so.
Some of the writing
I go
sounds
back to
dated,
Scorpion,
without a
and
doubt.
I think it's actually underrated in my opinion. But regardless, though, I mean, listen, overly dedicated for me. Let me explain you why I have it at the bottom of the pack. I feel like when you look at the pack of, let's say, mixtapes that were involved here, so I tried to classify it within that realm here. I look at, let's say, something like a Section 80. I look at the warm-up. I look at, let's say, So Far Gone. At the bottom of the pack for that sort of stuff as well. I think it's the worst mixtape out of everything that's been released from the big three. I don't think that's a bad take whatsoever. And honestly, bro, there's just a lack of memorable tracks on this. There's a lack of besides Michael Jordan.
Is bliss.
Besides Ignorance is Bliss and Michael Jordan.
I'm gonna get into it when I get into it, bro. I didn't come to it. I'm gonna name you those songs like Average Joe and other songs that are on that track list.
They're great written and great performances. But what I'm trying to tell you is that like Section 80 was really that takeoff period for him. This was like a precursor to that. There's a reason. Like I think there's a genuine reason why there was. Why are you laughing for? It's true though. You're looking at me like it's crazy for putting Overly Dedicated in like the bottom half of this ranking.
It's a really dope mixtape. And again, when I'm looking at some of these Drake projects that are dominating this section of our list, I feel like they are subpar in comparison to a project like that. But yeah, man, what else? Like in terms of Thank Me Later, I always felt like that was a pretty underrated project in Drake's catalog. So what made you place it at number what exactly did you have it?
I had it placed at 23.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially for him too, he's not even a big fan of this project. I feel like a lot of Drake fans don't really value this album all that much. There is like certain songs on here that really do hit hard.
There's anthems on here, bro. Fancy, looking at Miss Me, looking at Over.
Yes, but the thing is that you want to talk about an album that was made with commercial appeal, and that was the sort of thing that you were talking about with For All the Dogs. This is like the poster child for that. This is like the first like plastic Drake album you could possibly say was released within his catalog.
I don't know if it's plastic.
Yes, he said that was the attempt with it. Was legitimately for solo commercial success, and that he was not proud of this project. And you hear it in the quality. I'm sorry, when you look at other Drake projects, there's a lack of highs on this album, in my opinion.
I think there's a lot of highs, and I just think that like I had it at a similar range. I had it at 21. I'm just saying I think it is definitely underappreciated, and people overlook songs like Fireworks, where he's rapping about like how his parents' divorce affected him and how he wants to have a better family life when he builds one of his own, rapping about in 3 different verses on that song, even about his career and how he's afraid of his relationship with Lil Wayne changing as he gets more fame. Like there's so many highs, and I feel like what he went wrong with is just like the singing and the melodies they weren't as catchy. The choruses weren't as memorable besides a couple of tracks. So,
But I'm a big fan of a song like Light Up, for example.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a standout song in the early part of Drake's catalog. So I'm not saying that this project is completely gone, but I do think it's towards the bottom ranking.
anything
But
else to talk about for this 28 to 21?
I'm cool because honestly, we have a similar placement with Sideline Stories, so I'll talk about it within the next
Sideline Story. You already went through it or you didn't yet?
No, I didn't go through it, but I'm going to go through it right away over here.
Okay, so it's at number 20 for you?
It's at number 20. So you want to
Okay.
do this?
So yeah, I'll start with my 20 to 16, right?
Yeah, and then after that, I'm going to tell you mine right after you finish repeating yours.
All right. So at number 20, you're going to probably flame me for this one as well. KOD by J. Cole comes in at number 20.
We're close.
Number 19 is going to be So Far Gone by Drake. Number 18, that's where Overly Dedicated by Kendrick Lamar is going to come in. At number 17 is where I have More Life by Drake. And then at number 16 is where I have The Warm Up by J. Cole.
So we have similar projects around here, just some different placements.
Okay.
So 20 is Sideline Story. That's why I didn't complain about the Sideline Story pick. It's only a couple of off, so I think we kind of agree on the same ranking over there. 19, that's where I have The Warm Up. So still within the same realms. J. Cole's first mixtape. We could talk about that collectively together once I go over my list. 18, that's where I'm going to have Scorpion. So I didn't have it super high. Still towards the latter half of it, but I still have it above stuff like The Warm Up and Overly Dedicated. Then at 17, that's when I'm going to have KOD. And then 16, that's where I'm going to have More Life. So we have a lot of similar picks here. I wasn't going to flame you on the KOD pick because you do have some of the worst songs in J. Cole's catalog within this album, but you have some of the best highs within his catalog as well.
I think it's maybe like almost the most disappointing album out of the entire Big Three, in the sense that when you look at what that album could have been, it could have truly been J. Cole's magnum opus. Like the message that he tried to bring to the world with that album of, you know, making kids be weary of taking drugs and being obsessed with material obsessions. Like the concept was brilliant, just the execution was lacking, unfortunately. And I think the Kill Edward character dragged a couple of those tracks down as well. So that to me was maybe the most disappointing album out of the entire list. Was like, fuck, this could have been so good.
Even the big hits on this album, like let's say a KOD or even a Kevin's Heart, like Kevin's Heart is cool, like it's a nice song, but when I look at, let's say, his other projects, like maybe a 2014, he's not stacked. That song's not stacking up towards like a No Role Models or even a GOMD. When I look at, let's say, the biggest highs on this album, though, the reason why I wanted to put it a bit higher, like Once an Addict Interlude, you know, Window Pane, for me, Brackets as well, you know, 1985, The Fall Off, like these are serious records in J. Cole's catalog. And weirdly enough, I find like the values on the latter half of this track list, you know?
Yeah.
So I think we're on the same page about that. More Life. So we have More Life within the same percentile.
What was your number? I had 17.
I had 16. I think the reason why I had it ranked a bit higher than, let's say, a Scorpion was pure replay value and the highs on this album.
Yeah, man, and I feel like, you know, this project proved to me that there are accents that Drake could sell me. I've been buying them for fucking 7 years, bro. The UK accent, the Jamaican accent,
See, people
I'm
are so
buying
split
them.
on this. It's either people fucking hate the accents or people absolutely love them and they're stuck in their rotation.
And I think that when I look at the ratio of like skips to saves, this one is so fucking high, and it ranks high for me just because of the utility of this album. I feel like sonically, it's maybe the most diverse album that you could find on this entire list, low-key. And I feel like, again, obviously it doesn't have the focus and the cohesion and the structure that the albums that ranked above it do, but that's why it ranks at number 17. It's not that high, but again, song for song, you're getting some of Drake's best ever tracks on this album, in my opinion. Looking at something like a Do Not Disturb, looking at the energy he brings on a Free Smoke, like Drake is fucking locked in on this
Absolutely.
project.
Even the Sampha interlude with 44 to 22. You know, you have songs on here like even Passion Fruit, Blem, good stuff for the summer rotation. So I'm not mad at that. But how about the warm up? So we got a J. Cole mixtape here. We could agree that this is maybe a bit more like, you know, not, I wouldn't say the bottom tier of his catalog, but maybe the mid tier. That's why, like, I wanted to rank it a bit lower, but still the President's remix, like, you know, the 93 Till Infinity remix. There's just so many great records off of this project that I really do enjoy. It's just, it's very raw. It's a very raw project. And you could see that J. Cole was still trying to maybe find his sound within this first mixtape.
It is very raw. I think it's one of the more motivational mixtapes you'll find, and I definitely appreciate the hunger you get on songs like Can I Live. I love the euphoric and upbeat sounds of something like Get Up, and of course, that Dead Presidents 2 remix is one of my favorite remixes in hip hop history. So to hear a young J. Cole execute on that level, bro, like that was really dope. And of course, Lights Please, which was featured on this tape for the first tape out of any Cole project, because it would end up being featured on others, is the song that made him get discovered by Hove. So super important for his career in that sense as well. But let me talk about why I have Overly Dedicated at number 18, placing above something like a So Far Gone, placing above other mixtapes that you found surprising. So I feel like with Overly Dedicated, you are getting all of the foundational bricks that would end up molding Kendrick Lamar and the sound that he would go on to build. For example, looking at a song like Opposites Attract, it was so interesting to revisit a song like that because you see him tackle so many similar subjects. Like, for example, on this song about reasons why a man would cheat, to reason why a woman would cheat in a relationship, and then to see him sort of like touch on that through a more of a psychological lens and add more nuance to those same subjects later on in his career. It was just such a full circle moment for me where I'm like, so much of this material that was very conscious, that was very important and relatable for so many communities, you're getting it here. You're seeing glimpses of the genius from Kendrick on this project, and you have songs like Opposites Attract. You have amazing songs like Ignorance is Bliss. You have stuff like Barbed Wire. And I also love all the Roots beats that he ended up rapping over, the Jay-Z and Q-Tip production. Like, it was just a fun project that had little to no, I'm not going to say no skips, very few skips for me. And again, the performances are raw, they're energetic, and you're getting that raspiness from Kendrick. You're getting the makings of a star in this project.
At the end of the day, though, regardless if it's the building blocks of a catalog, I could say the same thing with the warm-up. Am I going to start ranking the warm-up higher because it's the building blocks of a catalog? No. I'm sorry. And yes, I agree with you.
But where are the real flaws within it? Like, that's what I'm trying to find.
You
sure,
have
you
skips
have
on
a
the
couple
project,
of skips.
and it's
but
just like you could see that like, it's not that Kendrick was awkward on the project. It's just that you could see that he was still trying to find his zone as an MC. And I feel like it did leave blemishes in certain performances on this project. So, for example, like the reason why I'll have something like, I don't know, a Thank Me Later Drake, for example, a bit above it. Let's say 2 places above it. That's a polished album. That's something that, in my opinion, has a lot more original production because, you know, it's all curated by himself. Drake's performances themselves are a lot better developed because Drake's maybe a bit later in the stage of his career. And he had more underneath his belt. Like, experience in studio album experiences for me, like, that's what matters to me as well, and the experience of going into that project.
I feel you, but I just feel like from a lyricism standpoint and even performance standpoint, I do find more value from Kendrick on this project than those other ones. But yeah, So Far Gone at 19, you had it, I believe, a bit higher, right?
Yeah, well, that's when we're going to start getting into this next portion of the list. So you want to do that?
Let's get into it. So now we are at 15 going into 11.
That is correct.
Okay.
Go for it, Lou.
This was a tough one now. Like, these are the projects that I had the hardest time deciding which one's better. So at 15, we have The Off Season by J. Cole. At 14, we have Born Sinner by J. Cole. At 13, we have Views by Drake. At 12, Untitled, Unmastered by Kendrick Lamar. And then at number 11, If You're Reading This, It's Too Late by Drake. I love that look. We'll get into it, bro. This is what we're here for. This is what we're here to do.
15, So Far Gone. 14, Born Sinner. 13, The Off Season.
Okay, there we go. Similar.
12, Section 80.
Wow.
11, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
That low for Section 80? No. You're bugging with that, bro.
I'm not putting Section 80 over fucking Views. I'm not putting Section 80.
I am.
I'm not putting Section 80 over If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. That's crazy. That is crazy, Lou.
It is. Again, we're talking about discography. We're talking about album experiences here, bro. Talking about album experiences.
Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
Listen, we're not doing... Listen,
Mr.
obviously...
Morale and the Big Steppers over If You're Reading This, It's Too Late.
In terms of the album itself, when I'm looking at performance for performance, when I'm looking at writing, when I'm looking at overall concept, yes, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I think, is a better album. It is.
Right.
Is that a shocker? Like, how are you going to act that surprised?
Well, this album didn't even crack your top 5 of 2022.
What would I rather listen to is If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. That's the project that, to me, the reason why I have it so high coming at 11 is because when I'm looking at, like, sheer slappers, out of not only this project, but every project on this list, it has the most pure slaps. That being said, there's more than just bangers when I'm considering what makes an album better than another. When I'm looking at,
of course,
when I'm looking at the flow of the track list of Mr. Morale, when I'm looking at what he's telling you, I'll tell you why Mr. Morale is at number 10 when I get into it, because we're still not at that section for me. But I really want to know what makes If You're Reading This Is Too Late better than Section 80 for you. That's where I was like, whoa.
Talk about the production. Start right there. Much better produced album. The whole Boy Wonder and Vinyl's production all over that album. No, that's iconic, bro. Stop it. Beats like Legend, beats like Know Yourself, beats like No Tellin', even having R&P cuts like there like Jungle. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. That is a much better produced album. I have beats on there that I enjoy on Section 80. I have stuff like J. Cole's production on High Power. I love the ADHD production.
The psychedelic production on Tammy's song.
Sure,
come on.
It's fantastic. But, bro, I don't think anyone here is going to argue that If You're Reading This Is Too Late. If You're Reading This, It's Too Late's production is worse than Section 80.
Okay, move on.
Okay, yes.
What's the next?
Okay.
What's the next one?
I could argue rapping performances
No,
are
you
par for
can't.
par.
No, you can't.
Absolutely, I can. I could absolutely do it any single day of the week.
You're going to compare which song to Rigor Mortis in terms of rapping ability?
You're right, but that's not the only song on the project. I look at something like
Okay,
No Makeup,
what
for
about High
example.
Power? High Power then. High Power.
I could give you a High Power, for example. If I had to go one, ooh, bro, I could probably go a No Tellin' on that one, bro.
It's not a better rapping
I go
performance.
No Tellin' on that one, absolutely. I go a No Tellin'. Yeah,
bar for bar, bro.
Yeah,
we could go into it, bro.
There's no way.
We can put them
in
side
the past,
by
you
side.
slandered If You're Reading This Is Too Late by saying it's not a classic. There I was like, listen, I completely disagree with you. That's fine.
I never
But to have Mr.
I
Morale,
love that project.
But to have Mr. Morale and the big fucking steppers over If You're Reading This Is Too Late is
Why are you
blasphemy.
saying it like it's a shit project? Mr. Morale and the big fucking steppers?
No,
like,
no.
Don't be bitter about that album.
Let's get something straight here, Lou. You didn't have this album in your top 5 of 2022, and you're gonna come here today and convince me that it's in front of If You're Reading This Is Too
Brother,
Late.
the Forever Story would be ahead of a lot of the albums on this list. We're not talking about 2022. We're talking about the Big Three's catalog. So forget other years and other rankings.
What I'm saying is that
we're
where
right
does
here,
this
right
come-
now, and
But-
we're talking about. Listen, it's not about my enjoyability about the project. If I'm being totally honest with you, out of the top 20 albums on this list, I'm not looking at my replay value. That's not going to be
So
something that
replay
means
value
the
had
most.
nothing to do with this list.
Of course, it had a role to play, but it wasn't the most important factor.
So-
It was one of the less important factors. I'm looking at Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. We both gave it an amazing review.
It's an amazing album. It was
I think,
my top 3
I
of the
think
year.
it is an amazing album. That being said, I think that just because my replay value is not that high doesn't mean I'm going to ignore the genius behind it. And I'm going to get into it when we get into our top 10. So what else do you want to ask me about? Do you want to ask me about Pim Pim Parade? Do you want to go into that? Because I had that
I can't
super
be
high
mad.
at 12.
Listen, we spoke about the reason why I think it's a bit lower down the list.
It would be
I
the
think-
best album in a lot of artists' catalogs. Like
I
literally
think-
the best album.
I think
Production is incredible. The jazz funk of Untitled 08, the rare mafioso rap beat of Untitled 07, the beat switches, the fact that it's all B-sides and it's a continuation thematically
B-sides have nothing to
of
do
one
with
of the
it.
best concept records ever. The unorthodox voices, the seamless tone switches mid-verse. To me, his performance on this album is more varied and more impressive than a lot of the performances on most of Drake and Cole's projects. That's how I feel. It really is.
I just think, like you were talking about value within a project, I just feel like there's certain albums within my list that offer a bit more. I can't argue against it, though. It's a fantastic project. I have nothing to say about that. But even at that, Views
Views at 13. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
doesn't make it. You've explained how this is like arguably one of your favorite Drake projects, bro. It's
It
incredible.
is, but it's at number 13. You're making it seem like I put it at fucking 30. I buried it underneath everything.
Yeah,
I
the diversity,
love
the
Views.
sounds, the concept of it, like
Absolutely.
the way that it was executed,
But
the hit records
again,
on that album.
rapping performances are superior on Untitled Unmastered, without a doubt.
Yes, but it's not only the rapping and writing that
The
goes into an album
production, the
experience.
production
You're-
is on par on Untitled Unmastered.
Oh, I disagree.
It's on par on Untitled Unmastered.
I disagree. I would argue Views is better, but then again, that's sort of like a finicky sort of thing. But all right,
Soundwave, Terrace Martin, you're getting like some of the best in the game on Untitled
Boy
Unmastered.
40. You're getting some of the best in the game on Views. What do you want me to do?
Okay, man.
It's at the end of the day, we're talking about some of the best albums that hip hop has ever seen because we're going into a big 3 catalog discussion.
Listen, bro, like I'm going to say for every selection that's above another, if you want to make the argument for a Views being better than an Untitled Unmastered, then just say it.
I did make my argument. I'm gonna make it more at least when I start getting into my 10 here. All right, so you want to do this, Lou? You want to get into the 10 to
Let's
5?
get into 10 to 6 right now.
10 to
My
6,
number 10 is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. My number 9 is going to be Friday Night Lights by J. Cole. My number 8 is going to be Section 80 by Kendrick Lamar. And my number 7 is going to be Take Care by Drake. And my number 6 is For Your Eyes Only by J. Cole. I think this is where we're going to probably have some similarities.
All right, let's keep going on with this. Let's go on to my number 10. I have Friday Night Lights. 9, I have Views. 8, I have If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. 7, I have Damn. 6, I have Take Care. That's where I'm at with it.
So Take Care above Damn, okay?
Take Care above Damn. I don't think there's anything to be said about that.
That's fine, yeah. I mean,
7, Damn's a top 10, top 10 album in this catalog ranking. It's definitely above If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. It's above Views. I have it above a lot of bigger albums. And I think, like I had said in previous conversations when we were ranking Kendrick's catalog, it's better than Mr. Morale, so I have no problem putting it there. Friday Night Lights, number 10, regarded as one of the best mixtapes of all time because it was supposed to be a studio album. It was supposed to be Cole's debut studio album, but ended up releasing it as a mixtape. Top 3 in Cole's discography, in my opinion, right behind For Your Eyes Only in 2014. Some of his best ever records within his catalog, Too Deep for Intro, Before I'm Gone, Vilmatic, you name it, he has it. 20 songs, but arguably no skips.
On Friday Night Lights?
Like, it's so consistent as a track list, and there's so much value within it, and it's maybe the hungriest you'll ever find J. Cole as far as, like, a studio album experience goes.
I maybe would have put it higher if it wasn't for songs like Love Me Not or Best Friend and a few of the other, like, kind of shitty love songs you find on the project.
But it's like,
it could have gone higher than number 9 for me.
Yeah, but there's only 2 of those records, low-key. That's why on a 20-song on a 20-song track list, it's pretty fucking consistent. So we had that at the same place.
Almost. I had a 9.
Yeah. So listen, the reason why I had Views in my top 10, I feel like the concept behind this record is super underrated. And I feel like it's consistent from track to track and sequencing to sequencing on almost every single song. I feel like the sequencing on Views is better than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I feel like the tracklist consistency is better on Views. I prefer the production on Views. I prefer the replay value on Views. And when I go on to different songs, for example, let's take a 9, Western Road Flows. Yes, they're not as lyrically dense as maybe United in Grief or A Father Time. And you could argue that, yes, maybe the messages aren't as important. Whatever. You could play that game if you want to. I just think when you really dive into how much Views has to offer, and especially with all the 4 seasons being woven into it, the incredible interludes, Drake's vocals and diversity on this album, this is a top 10 project for me. And I could argue that it's the most diverse project out of everything that they've released collectively, out of the big 3. Top 10 album for me.
I said maybe more to life for the most diverse. But I mean, I think what's interesting about like Views versus Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is just the fact that when you're looking at something like Views and the way the concept is really laid out, it's really like it follows a concept almost like more sonically than it does like lyrically, whereas a Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers really follows like its theme through like the messaging and the writing, and to me like that's more thought-provoking. That takes a bit more effort to craft a concept through the actual like the message of the music, whereas like with Views, again, it's really cool to go from like winter to summer back to winter. I love the flow of that, but again, to me it's like it's a bit easier to execute something like that.
Yeah, but it's not like you have that on every single song on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. There were certain blemishes within the sequencing of it. Example, something like A Rich Spirit, A Purple Hearts, even going on to a title track like Mr. Morale, you go into like maybe the writing of those songs and it doesn't necessarily steer away too much, but they almost feel like certain tracks that are kind of outside of the project themselves. So I do feel like there's a certain amount of bloat on that album.
Yeah, but plus, I could also say Hotline Bling that ends off the album doesn't feel like
that was
a winter
bonus
song.
Track. Yeah, that's a bonus track.
Still placed at the end of the track list.
It's a bonus track.
Still about curating and the way that you're sequencing the album is on the album.
Come on, bro. We've gotten the bonus tracks before, and that's never been a complaint. Just for the sake of your conversation, don't do that today. But regardless, though, even when we spoke about something like A We Cry Together, Auntie Diaries, we spoke about these songs because they're important in concept and they're rich in writing, and they add cinematic value to the studio album experience. Although, like you had said in previous podcast recordings, the reason why it brings this album down to a certain extent is that, bro, I can't go back to it. Like, it's fire, but you're listening to an album. You're not listening to a theater play as like an audio version of it.
At the end of the day, I've given this take before, and Schindler's List, for example, is one of the best movies I've ever watched. But I don't ever want to watch that movie ever again. But I can appreciate the work of art that it is. And with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, the reason why I have it at number 10, since we're bringing it into the conversation here, I think that when I look at Overly Dedicated all the way up to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, that is the biggest forward leap in any of their discographies in terms of artistic evolution. Spiritually, lyrically, sonically, this was the moment where I'm like, there is so much growth from this artist on a human level, on an artistry level, from the sounds that he's tackling, from the way that he's able to be more flexible with the types of styles that he's choosing to get into. I think that's why when we're looking at the totality of all of their work, this is the one where I'm like, what a fucking progression for this artist, and I think that's why it deserves to be here. And I also think that it's one of the most important records of the 2020s when you're looking at just how relatable and timeless a lot of these themes are, and I feel like they're going to be so helpful for people for decades to come across so many cultures, across so many generations. There's so much value there. So again, a lot of these tracks that are somewhat within this range have a skip or two, but I can overlook that for the moments of genius like Father Time and looking at what he did and how he's on this percussive timing with his flow on United and Grief. Like, there is wizardry going on in that album.
No doubt. That's why I gave it a top 3 standing. But at the end of the day, the whole Schindler's List comparison is not really all that great, just because when you go into Schindler's List, it's still a movie. There's a timeline, there's a narrative, like you're going through that. That is a movie format.
Yeah.
When you're going through the studio album experience, there are certain parts of this album that you can go through and that are very hard to get in musically, just because of the way that they're formatted and the way that they flow. We Cry Together, it's an open word concept. I love that song. But at the end of the day, that's going to diminish replay value for me. At the end of the day, my ear matters. If I'm,
of course it does.
Of course. And in a ranking, if I like a certain piece of food and I enjoy it, I don't give a fuck how it's presented, what type of quality ingredients. If it fucking tastes good, I'm going to go back and I'm going to eat it, regardless of whatever happens with it. Same thing with film, same thing with my entertainment. That's the way that I value it. So I understand why you have Mr. Morale there. I think that it's in that similar ranking. But regardless, though, I have views, and if you're reading this, it's too late over
all
it.
Right.
Top 5.
Number 8 and 7. Remind me what your picks were.
Number 8 and 7.
Yeah.
If you're reading this, it's too late and Damn. And then I have Take Care. I have Take Care over Damn.
So you had Damn over if you're reading this too late, right?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I did.
And then you had Take Care above Damn. I had Damn above Take Care. So talk to me about Take Care, bro. I think, listen, it's obviously one of the most important albums to come out of the 2010s. It was groundbreaking. It kind of it shaped the landscape of R&B and hip hop.
Well, I think it's super impactful.
Influential.
Yeah, you take that out of the equation. I mean, you could argue that it's the most influential album out of this entire ranking, so I think that adds points on it.
Yeah.
Influenced other artists, obviously, to go down this lane and to bring in that type of aesthetic into their catalog. Some of Drake's most vulnerable and best written songs off of this album. Like, I have to say, this is some of the best writing I've ever gotten off of a Drake album. Stuff like Underground Kings, stuff like The Ride. I mean, I'm going into that album and I'm getting a bunch of fucking quality, like, nonetheless. Also, the way that he was able to juggle R&B and hip-hop. It was the best juggling act I've seen in hip-hop history, right next to some of the stuff that Lauryn Hill did, that Kanye did.
Nothing was the same, which we'll get into as well.
Nothing was the same. But regardless, though, this was really the album that did it. Like, this was the album that it was like the juggle act. And I don't feel like a lot of albums in this top 10 have that juggle act to it. So I wanted to give it plus points for that. Now, if the juggle act was done and it wasn't done properly, then it's a completely different conversation. But you listen to vocals on a Marvin's Room. You go on to the melodies on a Take Care. You go on to, let's say, the second half of a Camera's Good One's Gone, for example. Those are fantastic R&B cuts. Like, we're talking top-tier R&B cuts of the 2010s on a hip-hop album. So there's very few albums I can name in hip-hop history that have done or that have accomplished what Take Care is.
For sure, and I feel like before this album, besides maybe 808s and Heartbreak or the first two Man on the Moons, you hadn't seen a mainstream rapper really bring in that mix of, like, confident bravado, but also really honest vulnerability, the way that Drake mastered it on Take Care. So I think that's why it needs to be in a top 10 list here. And I feel like this is the album where it's like, obviously the Drake fans love it, but even the people that don't fuck with Drake, they'll end up showing it its flowers too. And honestly, I know we're going to get it in the comments. Oh, the Weeknd wrote this album. Give all credit to the Weeknd. Shut the fuck up. Like, this was Drake fucking cooking, guys. You cannot remove the greatness And this is a classic album. That's another thing too. That was a big part of the recent battle, right? Was Kendrick saying that he doesn't have a classic and people agreeing with him. And just listen to this fucking album. And
It's a
you'll be
classic
proved
album.
wrong.
No way. All right, top 5.
Here we go. Just to give context, with this, it was pretty easy for me. I'm really not gonna lie. Number 5 is gonna be "Damn" by Kendrick Lamar. Number 4 is gonna be 2014 Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole. Number 3 is "Nothing Was the Same" by Drake. Number 2 is "To Pimp a Butterfly" by Kendrick Lamar, and number 1 is "Good Kid, Mad City" by Kendrick Lamar.
Number 5 for me, "For Your Eyes Only" by J. Cole. Number 4, "Nothing Was the Same" by Drake. 3, 2014. 2, GKMC. Number 1, "To Pimp a Butterfly." So you guys have been watching the podcast for a while. You guys know how I feel about "For Your Eyes Only" in 2014. As of late, though, especially this year, I was saving this take for this episode. I do feel like it's a better studio album.
Really? Okay, I want to
Yeah.
know like what made you change your tune with that.
I just think it's the amount of sheer fucking like records that you're getting off of this, like value for value. Like if I put this in a trackless battle versus "For Your Eyes Only," I think it's gonna get it. I could argue that the concept at the same time is maybe a bit better woven in than "For Your Eyes Only," but that's not the only thing going for an album. And I've started looking at studio album experiences a bit different, just besides maybe rapping performances. Even at that, something like a Deja Vu, something like a Neighbors, like I like these songs, but when you have a shorter track list, like tracks like that really do matter, you know? And for me, I feel like they do weigh down the track list just a tad. But regardless, though, when I look at 2014, bro, GOMD, 2014. GOMD, No Role Models. January, Fire Squad, fucking Tale of Two Cities, 03 Adolescent, Love Yours. Like, bro, what are we doing here? This album is filled with classics. And I could argue that 2014 is on the same level with "For Your Eyes Only" thematically. It is.
It is, yeah. You're kind of getting like J. Cole having this enlightenment about what really matters in life by looking at like his adolescence through a microscope.
It's the biggest turning point of his career.
Yeah.
It's the biggest turning point of his career. That's why I think "For Your Eyes Only" is a bit more cinematic.
It is.
But that doesn't always equal to a better album experience for me. And I prefer the production on 2014.
I think it's easily J. Cole's most focused album when I'm talking about "For Your Eyes Only." It's 10 songs. There's a narrative about this character, James, who is in a life of crime and who is trying to get out of it and leave a message behind for his daughter. I love it and all. But that being said, I hate to say it, but like you said, there's only 10 songs. You kind of have to look at every song, and each song does hold so much weight. And looking at a Neighbors, I've always tried to be like, okay, well, maybe it connects to the story this way or that way. But in reality, it doesn't connect to the character of James. And it almost feels like an outlier in that track list, no matter how much I love that project.
No, don't fuck around. Like, that could get the pass.
But
it doesn't weigh down the album.
I'm just saying it does not fit into the storyline of the album. And that kind of sucks. And to be honest, same thing with Fold and Close. That's why it's not a top 5 in this list for me. Is even with a Fold and Close, you only have 10 songs. So having a skip like that does weigh it down slightly. So that's how I feel about that album.
All right, so let's talk about, I believe, you guys know about how Lou feels like "Nothing Was the Same" was better than 2014.
We did a whole free smoke on that.
I feel like 2014 is better than "Nothing Was the Same," and pretty standard 1 and 2. I think everyone expected it. I think there's no debate. And you could go either way.
So what surprised you out of this top 5? Like, did anything surprise you? Maybe
No,
Damn being that high?
No, because I have it at 7. I don't really feel hurt about it. I thought you were gonna have maybe "Take Care" in the top 5. I felt like that was gonna be maybe a shot over there. Your 15 to like 5 was surprising, bro. That's where I was like, okay, like I thought "If You're Reading This Is Too Late" was gonna be a lock in this top 10 ranking. Like if you would have told me this morning that Lou Guarini was gonna put Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers over "If You're Reading This Is Too Late," I would have called you fucking stupid.
But again, what album am I bumping more or listening to more? It's "If You're Reading This." What album do I think at face value? If I'm like just getting out of my own bias, I feel like it's Mr. Morale.
But at the end of the day, you're making it seem like it's only replay value.
It's not.
It's not. It doesn't only come down to replay value. Yeah, for sure, the replay value smokes Mr. Morale.
It
does. But even looking at the production, I could argue that the rapping performances are still on par with some of the stuff on Mr. Morale. I could put up, like I said, I could put up a "No Talent" there. I could put up a "Know Yourself." I think the hooks are better on the album as well. So I don't know what to say. I feel like
I literally had it one place behind it, bro. So like, you're making a bigger deal out of it than I think you
I think
should.
it's a huge. Do you want to? Do you guys? Let me know how you feel about that. Maybe I'm fucking stupid.
I think it's going to be very split. I think people are going to be split on which one's better. I do want to say this, though. It's interesting to me how when you're looking at who has the best debut album out of the three, it's Kendrick Lamar. Who has the best second album, like sophomore album out of the three, it's Kendrick Lamar. Who has the best third studio album out of the three, it's Kendrick Lamar. Like he really, he got them in those three stages of the career. And I think ultimately what this list proves is that Kendrick does have the best discography. It shouldn't come as a surprise out of the entire three. I think that Drake has the weakest. I don't think that his best work is a light pack. I think that's an over-exaggeration. But yeah, if I had to rank them, obviously, I think we both be on the same page in terms of catalog. It's Kendrick first, probably Cole second, and Drake third.
I feel like the bloat is crazy towards the end of Drake's catalog. Especially with the last three. The last three was easy, bro. I had no hard time doing that. That was easy. It was like, okay, 28, 27, 26. But guys, let us know in the comment section. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? And am I a fucking moron for thinking If You're Reading This Is Too Late is better than Mr. Lamar and the Big Steppers? And guys, we have a lot more concepts just like this coming for you guys on this channel. So if you guys did enjoy the experience today, smash the subscribe button. We're uploading on a weekly basis. Thank you so much for watching this, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.